Call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District. And notice to the public that you can view the board meeting live on our website, vwd.org/meetings, or you can listen in on your phone at 888-788-0099. And let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Pennick, would you mind leading us?
Sure. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Will you walk back in?
Roll call, please.
Kick me out. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Very good, and we're all present. Additions to the agenda? Any additions?
Not from staff, no.
Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
And a second, vote please. And it passes unanimously. Do you have any public comments?
We do not.
Very good. And we have a presentation.
Yeah, maybe I could do some introduction here. So at a couple of meetings ago, there was a discussion near the end of the meeting about getting an update on the Colorado River water supplies. What did it mean that the deadline had passed for the Bureau of Rec, those types of issues. So we reached out to the County Water Authority to get hear it from the authority on here. So Deputy General Manager of the County Water Authority, Dan Denham, is joining us tonight. He is their Colorado River water person. So Dan, we'll share your presentation and take it away.
All right.
Here you
I'm guessing the green light means the mic's on. All right.
go. Yeah, now you're on.
All right, here we go. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I was telling Director Elitharp, my Google Maps told me that it's been 3 years since I've been here, so nice to be back. Yeah, the Colorado River right now it seems to be the center of every media cycle. What we're facing on the river in terms of the short and long term. So that's kind of what I hope to talk a little bit about, and what our region's stake is in the success of the river, and really what's at risk, not just for the San Diego region, but for Southern California, the lower basin states that share the river, and the upper basin as well. So why don't I get started with the first slide here, the next slide actually. And so this is just the where we're at, right? 24 member agencies, I think you all know that. 36 member board of directors, the second largest on the West Coast, only 2 behind the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. But I think the significance here is that what I'm about to talk to you about, the Colorado River supplies. It's 50% of our regional supplies. It's 50% of what we have at the Water Authority that we provide to member agencies in excess of their local supplies. So that's just the significance, I think, of why I'm here to talk about the river. Next slide, please. So this graphic used to look a lot different. It used to be a 70-30 split between the State Water Project and the Colorado River, and it fluctuated year to year. Of course, local water supply development, as that came online with Carlsbad desal, reuse that's, as you know, taking off here in our region, and recycled water, that grew from 1-2% up to where it's at now at 31%. But the State Water Project, it's I think, as you all hear, it's in pretty bad shape, but getting better. We do expect to see an increase in the State Water Project allocation here in the coming weeks. I think that's good for our friends in Los Angeles, some of which are 100% dependent on State Water Project supplies. Some of those communities have been on 1 day a week watering. It's much different here in San Diego, and it's much different because of, I think, what we've done and some of these investments that I want to talk to you about on the Colorado River. So next slide, please. So the QSA, the Quantification Settlement Agreement, really this started back in the 90s when California went on its water diet, its first water diet. And what started off is, believe it or not, a term sheet in the mid-90s for 500,000 acre feet worth of water, an agreement between the Imperial Valley and San Diego. Eventually it got down to 300,000 acre feet back in 2002. By 2003, we agreed on a 200,000 acre foot transfer. It started off as a 45-year transfer agreement, extendable to 75. We extended the transfer to 45 when we had the option. I believe it was back at the end of 2017. With that came the exchange agreement extension that we have with the Metropolitan Water District. This, of course, is how we convey the water to San Diego. There's no physical connection. But it's long-term, and it's a senior priority. It's tied to senior priority water rights, and that's going to be the key going forward as I start talking about the Colorado River. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start to unpack a little bit the transfer and the canal lining projects. I mentioned the time frame. There's an environmental component to this. The Salton Sea is a very important piece. Many say the last puzzle piece to the Quantification Settlement Agreement. The Water Authority, outside, I think the folks in the Imperial Valley have been the biggest proponents of environmental mitigation projects and air quality, public health issues out at the valley. More than $100 million has been provided to part of a joint powers authority that we're part of, and we're working with the valley and the Coachella Valley Water District in the state of California to develop habitat. The Salton Sea is often an afterthought, I think, when you talk about water in the West, especially Colorado River water. Years ago, there was an agreement for the Imperial Valley to conserve an additional amount of water, and there was some blocking of that, the blocking of the deal, because folks in other states did not want funding to go for environmental mitigation, and IID opted out. Perhaps we're there again as we get into discussions on the river, but nonetheless, it's an important piece to this puzzle. Next slide, please. So the transfer was a package deal. You have the 200,000 acre feet from the transfer, and then you have the 77,000 acre feet from the canal lining projects. Outside of good old conservation from our ratepayers, this is the cheapest water in San Diego. This is probably $25 an acre foot worth for 77,000 acre feet worth of water. We receive the rights to this water through the QSA. The project lining the two previously earthen canals cost the Water Authority $500 million. We were able to get about $250 million from the state of California to offset those costs. And we have this water for 110 years. So when you take the reliability, and this is all just background for the river, I think is important here. When you have the reliability of the high priority, the senior priority, 200,000 acre foot transfer water, plus this, like I said, extremely cost-effective supply, that's the base of our water for the San Diego region in terms of the Colorado River, and everything else, in my view, sort of tears off that. The next increment of supply obviously will be reuse. It allows us to do projects like Carlsbad. When you have $3,000 water and you mix it with $20 water, it makes it a little bit more affordable. And that's kind of the mix, the portfolio mix that we look towards in the long-term planning. Next slide, please. So the drought. Arizona and Nevada and Mexico are facing shortages right now. Their water use has been reduced. It's been reduced based on mandatory reductions that they agreed to as part of what is considered the law of the river. These are, decades old Supreme Court cases. contracts, compacts amongst the states, and then some voluntary. But this was all sort of set in place in the decades leading up to the QSA in 2003. You got to 2007 where there were a set of agreements where many thought that they had the contracts and the operational criteria in place to run the reservoirs that we use on the river, Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam, Lake Powell and Lake Mead. But it wasn't enough, and I think that that's what we're looking at today. The Bureau of Reclamation has asked that all parties conserve more, and the Water Authority is in a position where it certainly understands the gravity of the situation, but I think that we, the Water Authority, and the California parties as a whole, we keep going back to this idea of priority rights, the law of the river, and not infringing upon a system that was created and arguably what San Diego County ratepayers have paid for leading up to where we're at today. So next slide, please. So the drought actions that have been taken so far, the federal government has asked for what they're calling a 500-plus plan. It's 500,000 more acre-feet worth of water. Glen Canyon Dam, as I mentioned, that serves much of the power of the West, certainly Hoover as well. And so there's a power element to all of this. I think it's on the next slide. I'm going to show you some elevations that are very critical to minimum power pools. One of the stopgap measures that the parties developed just this past year was to maintain those elevations at Lake Powell so as to not impact minimum power pools. Like I said, much of the power in the west comes out of Glen Canyon Dam, certainly Hoover. The Water Authority receives a small portion of Hoover power, but the Hoover power contracts largely supply LADWP and the Metropolitan Water District. So trying to hold off impacting those two agencies in Southern California. Next slide, please. So these are the elevations I was kind of referencing here. You can kind of see we're not too far from minimum power pools. The projected Lake Mead level, it's at 1050. That's at year end. Right now it's hovering around 1047. And the projected lake level at Powell, 3522, it's just under that mark as well. So it kind of begs the question, well, what about all of this rain? What about the snowpack? Has the situation improved? As of the last reporting period, they do a study, a 24-month study. It's just a sort of a rolling average of where reclamation believes water will be. The recent storms and snowpack have improved the situation. The probability of shortage has been reduced by 10%, but it's still 60%, right? And so what that means is that if things continue the way they are, and we're not going to solve this overnight on the Colorado River with snowpack, there's probably going to be a 60% chance that you start to see really, really deep hits as in water reductions to junior priority water users. So those juniors would be Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico has agreed to take part in some of that voluntarily, not based on the treaty that we have with Mexico. So let's go to the next slide, and we're gonna start talking about the different proposals that have come through. In light of these shortages, Reclamation has started an environmental review process where, in my words, I think they kind of see the writing on the wall, that there are going to be reduced inflows on the river, and because of that, they only have environmental coverage for what was agreed upon back in 2007. So it asked for all of the states to come up with proposals as to what should we do, what should Reclamation do. As I'll show you, the California position has always been follow the law of the river, follow the contracts that are in place, do what has been entrusted in you as the Secretary of the Interior. The other states, so really what we're talking about here, and let's go to the next slide. We're talking about 6 states versus California in many ways. And I think it's putting California in an unfortunate position in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, the investments that we've made, the water rights that we have as senior water users in the Imperial Valley and in Southern California. Because what the six-state proposal is planning to do is go around those water rights. We're still very much focusing on conservation. This is a position that we've developed. When I say we, the Colorado River Board of California consists of the Water Authority, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the Imperial Irrigation District, the Coachella Valley Water District, and the Palo Verde Irrigation District. The Water Authority's representative from the city of San Diego, Jim Madaffer, is the vice chair of the Colorado River Board. I support him in negotiations, and so we do have a voice at the table in all of this. But the proposal that was developed largely resembles what we've done with the QSA. Continue to conserve ag water use efficiency, but not going around the law of the river. And I think for the first time, we've collectively become comfortable with definitively stating that it's time that other states do what we've done in Southern California. I think that we all agree that water is expensive in San Diego. It's expensive in Southern California, and I think that's because all the cheap water's gone. We've done that through desal. We're going to be doing more of it with reuse. A lot of that has not been done in other places. And so the point here that I think the California position is that you can't go around the law of the river, you can't go around water rights and take more from a state that has already balanced the books on the backs of its ratepayers. And so that's the core position that we're taking. And interestingly, in the six-state proposal, we can go to the next slide, it talks a little bit about what their proposal was. It, of course, infringes upon California, but it also took a step too far, I believe, and assigned reductions to Mexico. Mexico has reached out to the State Department and let them know that they believe that this is an infringement upon their sovereignty. And so, interestingly, California and Mexico seem to be aligned in terms of following the law of the river and the priority system. So in sort of a nutshell, I think that what the six-state proposal does, it calls for about 1.5 million acre feet worth of cuts to California. We have 4.4 million acre feet worth of water. It's a significant reduction. And that will all come most likely from agriculture. That's where all of California's Colorado River water is at. IID has over 3 million acre feet worth of rights to the Colorado River. And so then you get to, well, how do you get there? And I think it's largely a function of price, and it's what's the market value of water. A lot of parties believe the federal government has put out a federal solicitation process to suggest that the going rate is $400 an acre foot. The growers in the valley will tell you it's $1,500 an acre foot, and that's the gap that we're dealing with here. But nonetheless, I think that's where the negotiations end up. It will be on what groups are willing to pay to conserve water. Perhaps the federal government comes in some sort of buyout of water, keeps that water in Lake Mead. Perhaps water is transferred to another party, like how the QSA and the water authorities transfer worked. And then there's what I keep referring to as the last piece of the puzzle is the Salton Sea. Any drop of water that leaves the Imperial Valley is a drop of water that doesn't make it into the Salton Sea. And with that comes exposed lake bed, emissive playa, and public health issues if it's not addressed. So that's kind of the situation that we're in. Next slide. So I think that this is the last one I have here, and I can start talking a little bit about next steps. But in terms of where we're at, San Diego, our region, like I said, our water, the 50% that we have from the QSA, it's tied to the high priority water rights of the Imperial Valley. And, you know, make no mistake, if the federal government does do something to go around those water rights, you know, we will be in protracted litigation on this for a very long time. And I'm not talking about just San Diego. We're talking about 7 states that share the Colorado River. So compromise has to occur. I think the situation calls for it, but I think that, you know, each party's ask has to really be measured, right? I think that the writing's on the wall, that we know that we still have to do more, even though we admittedly have done a lot. But others need to step up a little bit more than they have, or at least get started, I think is the point here. So as we go forward, we're going to look to some modeling results from reclamation in April. It'll give us all sort of the first blush as to where water year 2024 will be. This will be at January 1, how much water is allowed per each of the contractors on the river. We'll get to August, where they will set that in stone, and that's where we'll see where the compromise takes place in the whole package. I think that's the last slide I have. Yep.
Questions? I have one.
Yeah.
With this large snowpack that we have right now, over, I just heard 500 to 700 inches, how much impact is that going to have on the river and or Powell and Meade?
In the short term, not much. What I referenced earlier was a 10% improvement. It is turning out to be one of the better years, if not the best. I know on the State Water Project and in the Eastern Sierras, but a lot of it's still uncertain because no one knows what the spring will bring. If the spring temperatures come in warmer, and there's actually a front coming in, my understanding, that's going to be a couple additional atmospheric rivers that will be warmer than the last several that we received. If that significantly impacts the snowmelt, it will be less. The impact will be less.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question. Yeah.
Yes.
First, thank you for being here. Very informative. Little geography lesson for myself. I have 2 questions. One, you mentioned the law of the river. Follow the law of the river. Can you summarize what that means for me?
Yeah, it's kind of nebulous. You know, I always go back to just there's a number of compacts that set out who gets what, right? Some agencies got all of the water and high priority water, some got the storage. A lot of this, it dates back to the 1920s. And then you had a number of Supreme Court decisions that further clarified that. The QSA, the contracts that we have, the 36 contracts amongst the parties, that's considered the law of the river. Mm-hmm. So it's just a compilation of rules, some in statute, some Supreme Court decisions, and some contracts amongst the parties.
That has just been added to since the 20s.
Absolutely, yeah.
Gotcha, okay. And then a little geography. Salton Sea, you mentioned that, and I can tell you're concerned about it. Where is there anything that flows into the Salton Sea, or is it all just rainwater? Where do they get?
It's all, well, so the Salton Sea is a federally designated agricultural sump. So of the 3 million acre feet that IID puts to beneficial use, and that's another key term here, on farms in the valley, makes its way underground through drainage and tile systems to the Salton Sea. Oh, okay. So the sea, just the real quick on it, you know, it was created in the early 1900s by an engineering mistake that caused a levee to break, and everything flowed to the low point out in the Imperial Valley. So it maintained itself for the period of decades based on you know, flood irrigation out in the valley, which still occurs today. Back in the 1980s, the IID, Imperial Irrigation District, found itself in front of the State Water Board with allegations of wasting of its water, meaning the state of California believed that it was wasteful to allow that water to make it to the Salton Sea and not be beneficially used on the urban coast or elsewhere. So that's what started the QSA, and since then, with efficiency projects out in the valley, that sea has shrank. And that's been a well-known thing. Everyone knew that going in. And it's a hard, tough nut to crack. There's a disadvantaged community out in the Imperial Valley whose needs need to be addressed. And, there's the Pacific Flyway that is significantly impacted.
What's the salt content in there, do you know, percent-wise?
It's twice that of the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all fish except for some really tough tilapia are gone at this point, and the ecology of the sea has changed drastically over the past 20 years.
So I was wondering, yeah, cool. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
You had a question?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, first I would like to recognize Director Boyd Hodgson for bringing this to our attention originally, and then Director Elitharp for bringing you in to speak to us. Really appreciate both, and especially you for coming in and explaining this. It's really beneficial to myself to get this understanding, and if I'm hearing it for the first time, I'm sure the public is unaware of it, because every article I read is somewhat negatively slanted towards California regarding this. So my one piece of feedback would be to if we can help work together to better make the public understanding of California's perspective of this, because it really changed my point of view.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, and I would just say that as we came out with the position that we took at the Colorado River Board of California, we immediately engaged with the administration in Sacramento. Wade Crowfoot was with us the whole time, making sure that the Newsom administration was on board with the positions that we were taking. We engaged with Feinstein and Padilla's office in terms of where they were. They're in a tough position, as well as Congressman Peters and Levin in terms of their colleagues in the other 6 states, sort of saying we need more out of you, California. So we really are Team California in this. I think that both sides of the aisle and all of our representatives understand the gravity of the situation and being firm in where we're at.
Thanks again.
Thank you again for coming. This has been very informative, and I'm glad that you were able to come and share this. And I appreciate that you did it in a very explicit way, and that's very simple, because I had some basic questions too about what exactly is the law of the river. So thank you for that. And I agree with Director Grosset. I just went to a conference and heard Bill Hassenkamp speak, and it does seem like there some effort towards kind of PR about what we're trying to do in California. When there's an op-ed in the New York Times about sort of bashing California about water, it makes me think that, wow, maybe there should be some kind of education effort to just better explain, because if you don't live in California or any of these other states, if you live on the East Coast, this doesn't make any sense. It's very complicated. No one really quite understands it out that way. But thank you for your efforts. Regarding the Salton Sea and the mines that are planned out that way, how do you see that impacting, or do you see that impacting our water supply, the water flowing into the Salton Sea, which I was also glad to hear a little bit about too. I had no idea that that's the way that it worked.
Yeah, so back in 2003, when we signed the QSA contracts, the Joint Powers Authority that we immediately became part of, we started to manage the monitoring of air quality around the Salton Sea and the communities at the sea, as well as doing wildlife surveys, things of that nature, to the point where in 2025, the 3 parties will have contributed just under $300 million for projects at the sea. Some of that's habitat, some of it's dust suppression projects, just crusting over the playa at the sea. Once that money's expended, the state of California has agreed that it's theirs to take on, and they're part of us, or they're part of the JPA. It's interesting. For so long, for 20 years, we were fighting for money outside of the water agency money, outside of what's being funded through ratepayer money. And we were able to get $350 million, and it's sitting there in the Salton Sea Restoration Fund. And it's one of those things, now that there's more money, there's more problems, and everyone's fighting over the money. And so the progress is really slow. The federal government, so when it comes down to it and the playa is exposed, the outside ring is the Imperial Irrigation District and some state lands. Once you get towards the center, it's federal lands, BLM land. And so the feds know that they have a stake in this, and I think that for the first time in the conversations we've been having with them on river issues, they're willing to commit some of the $4 billion in Inflation Reduction Act money towards this. I think it's about $200 million is the number that I recall. In terms of your question, how does that impact us in San Diego? You know, the mitigation has to continue. The state has backstopped it. We went through 10 years worth of litigation very early on, where some of the Joint Powers Authority agreements were challenged and alleged to be invalid. We were successful in that litigation, and so when it comes down to it, it is the state that will need to take care of things at the sea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, President Hernandez. So Dan, thanks for coming. So last I heard, over 80% of the water used in California is agricultural. That's probably close, right? And as you mentioned, any meaningful step to reduce the usage in California would require involvement of the agricultural community. Mine is maybe as much a statement as a question, but a lot of the agricultural water that we use here grows fruits and vegetables that get exported outside of California. So how does that get factored into the equation that we're basically exporting water to the states that can't grow the fruits and vegetables themselves?
Yeah, it's the age-old question. It's like food versus microchips, and I think that we get that a lot. The forage crops that you're talking about in the Imperial Valley, absolutely. Some of that alfalfa and Sudan grass is shipped out. You know, you can be more efficient though with how you use that water, and we've done some of that as part of the QSA. Again, I hate to get back to the price of the water, but the growers need to be incentivized. They pay $20 an acre foot for water right now, because if they don't use it and don't irrigate through flood irrigation or in other forms, the water falls through this priority system and they lose it. So they're incentivized to continue the way of life, the business practices that they have. You don't have to flood irrigate everything. I mean, you can grow onions and you can grow broccoli through drip, right? And so it's just a matter of who is going to provide that incentive to the small business owner to make those improvements in their fields, right? To pay for laser leveling, things of that nature. And I think that it has to be a state or federal investment, especially if the state and federal government has this problem on the river. So I guess the way I'm answering it is you can still protect food production, which I think is very important, while still being efficient with water. You just got to find the sweet spot with the price.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know, with ag and the Imperial Valley taking potentially taking more cuts with some kind of compromise agreement, is it envisioned that would be the federal government's funding a fallowing program amongst farmers?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because of this $4 billion that I referenced.
Right.
So the quick tourniquet for this year is going to be land fallowing. It's taking.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, taking farmland out of production. Long term though, a lot of that money is going to have to go to bricks and mortar type projects. The types of projects like the canal lining that we did in the valley, you know, arguably reuse projects here in San Diego, in Los Angeles, big reuse projects that can produce 50, 100,000 acre feet worth of water. Once the solicitation process begins at the end of the first quarter of this year, the Water Authority is going to look into expansion of the Carlsbad desal plant. And it's not going to be expansion for water for our region. because I don't believe that we need the water. But we're going to apply and help facilitate another party. If they want to come in and pay for, I think as you all know, this board certainly knows, the extra 6,000 acre feet that you can get out of that plant. So if another party such as Arizona is willing to invest in Carlsbad desal, we can leave 6,000 acre feet worth of water in the Colorado River for their use. And the desal water would actually be used in San Diego. But you start the way that people need to think more transactionally, is what I'm trying to say. How can you move water without a pipe, paper water transfers? How can you share sources and make investments outside of your own service area? So when I say we're applying, again, it's not to bring more $3,000 water to San Diego. It's to facilitate a transaction. And Arizona, they just finished up with a study. They're looking at Sonoran desal in Mexico to pump through a 100+ mile pipeline into Phoenix, and they don't blush at $5,000 an acre feet. And so that's kind of where the market is right now.
Yeah, just as a commentary, I'm a little bit pessimistic about the ability to reach compromise with 6 other basin states that have kind of ganged up on California. I guess I'm worried that there's going to be protracted litigation and it ends up in the Supreme Court, and I'm not so sure they're going to uphold the priority of rights that have historically been upheld by previous Supreme Court decisions. So it's kind of a wild card out there. So maybe your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Congress can do many things. They can create laws, and then those laws, people may threaten litigation, and it may go to the courts. Congress, the 6 states could get the votes, right, to say we are redoing the priority system, and that could absolutely happen. I think what's important is the California versus Arizona decision, and original jurisdiction on all of these matters will go back to the Supreme Court, and it's the Supreme Court that decided the priority system on how things are right now. So if the court were to go back on its decision that it made in the 70s, perhaps, but that's definitely a 10-year, 20-year process. So we're all served much better by coming to some sort of consensus.
So one last question. So I just attended a conference, and there were quite a few discussions about fallowing versus not fallowing, and someone brought up national security, for our food supply. Is the Water Authority engaging with folks in any kind of discussion about any kind of ramifications that might impact national security?
Not directly, no. The Imperial Irrigation District, that's front of their mind, and because of our business relationship with them, we are supportive of anything that they would position themselves in that regard. Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions? Well, Dan, thank you so much.
Yep.
Great presentation.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Come back again.
I will.
All right.
Maybe when we know what's going to happen in 2024, I'll be back.
Not every 3 years. It's been 3 years.
Yes, 3 years. Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan. Appreciate it.
Moving on to the consent calendar, I need a motion to approve.
Move to approve?
Second?
And please vote. And it passes unanimously. Moving on to the action items, 2.1, General Counsel Service Agreement.
Yeah, I'll take that one, President Hernandez. So the item in front of you is a recommendation to approve a professional services agreement with Best and Krieger to provide legal services. As you know, we recently went through a competitive process. Best and Krieger is nearing the end of their 5-year initial term. Well, they had a 3-year initial term and 2 1-year extensions. March 30th marks the end of the full 5 years that they will have served us. So we went through a competitive process. We interviewed 3 firms. The board identified Best and Krieger as the best candidate, directed the general manager to negotiate with them. We've done so. Best and Krieger worked with us and reduced some of their hourly rates, moved some services that would have been higher priced, special legal services into the regular general services, which will save the district money. Made the concession to only charge us one-way travel for their time and no expense costs with travel, right? They're not charging us for mileage or fuel or anything like that. So I feel it's a fair compromise that we reached with them through the negotiation process. So what you see in front of us is another, it's a contract for a 3-year term, and similar to the last one with 2 one-year extensions possible. It would become effective April 1st if approved, and it would last us for possibly up to 5 years. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions? Then I entertain a motion to accept the service agreement.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
please vote. And it passes unanimously. Those are the end of the action items. And now on to reports. General Manager?
Yeah, just one item, informational item. I received a phone call from the County Water Authority, and they asked if the Vallecitos Water District would be interested in sponsoring an event to host the new Metropolitan Water District Chair. His name is Adan Ortega. And what Adan is trying to do is improve the relationships between the County Water Authority and Metropolitan, right? The Water Authority, Metropolitan did something similar with their general manager, Mr. Haji Khalil. Same thing, trying to get out there, get known, and make sure that we're working as well as we can. So just want to let you know that I agreed that Vallecitos would co-sponsor this event. There's several other agencies. It's only cost us $500, but our name will be on there. The event takes place on March 16th at 6 o'clock, and it's at the Holiday Bay Room up on in Canyon Lake. So the traffic isn't going to be favorable, so you'll be heading in the evening at that time of day, but they do require RSVPs. There's no limit, but they do need to know in advance how many people. So if you're at all interested in attending, and again, March 16th, it's a Thursday, at 6 o'clock, just let me know and I'll pass your name along. But I just wanted to let you know that we will be sponsoring this event, so don't be surprised if you see Vallecitos' name as a sponsor, because I think anything we
Where's the
can do.
location, I'm sorry?
It's up in Canyon Lake.
Canyon Lake.
Yeah, it's at the Holiday Bay Room at 22200 Canyon Club Drive in Canyon Lake.
All right.
It does require RSVPs by March 10th. And I think anything Vallecitos can do to foster a better relationship between Metropolitan and the Water Authority is a good thing.
Yes.
Because the Water Authority is a direct member agency of Metropolitan, they can't directly sponsor the event. So they're reaching out to their member agencies to see if we'll help sponsor it. And I think it's a small price to pay that'll hopefully yield great benefits. So.
Director Gossick?
I cannot personally attend, but if you have not been to Canyon Lake, it's a beautiful community up there, and encourage anyone who can attend to attend, just if not for anything else, to see the beautiful community up there and their own water preservation efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Anything else?
And that's all I have.
Very good. General Counsel?
Thank you. First and foremost, thank the board. As I indicated during the interviews, we really consider it a privilege and an honor to have worked with you the past 5 years, and look forward to continuing the relationship and growing the relationship over the coming years. So the only other item I had is there are 3 bills now floating up in Sacramento relative to teleconferencing, which may never die. So they're iterations of the current situation. One of them, which is being supported by CSDA, is a bill that would essentially back the emergency allowance, so you can have teleconferencing during stated emergencies, but that is set to expire in 2024, so they just want to make that a permanent option to the boards. So with that, don't have any other comments.
All right. San Diego County Water Authority.
Okay, the board had its regular February meeting on the 23rd. Pretty routine. A couple items of note. Board authorized the general manager to implement the renewal term of the contract with CH2M Hill Engineers Incorporated for a 5-year extension for continued operation and maintenance of the Twin Oaks Valley Water Treatment Plant. And then the other item of note was the board authorized ending the Water Authority's COVID-19 emergency declaration. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And seeing the wastewater, our capital committee is next week, as well as our board meeting.
As well as policy and finance?
Sorry?
As well as policy and finance?
Yes. Very good. Standing committees. And we had an engineering committee this week, or was it last week? It was on the 28th, so it was this week. And we went over project status, biennial update, capital improvement program, second quarter update, project update for Sage Canyon tank replenishment, and project update for the sewer liner and rehabilitation of 2021. Any other standing committees?
Just that Hillside met.
Very good. Directors' reports on committee meetings.
Just at the Hillside committee we met as you were there. Nothing to report though.
Yeah, we don't typically report out on the ad hoc committee meetings, but yeah, we did meet.
No, I don't have any.
Very good. I attended the Urban Water Institute Committee, very entertaining, informative. It was entertaining as well, because we had, for those who don't know him, Rich Nagel is quite the character, been around the water industry for 30 years, now a consultant with an organization, but he did water bingo, and had this big bingo chart, and you fill it out, and then if you got bingo, you got a prize, and if you got a prize, you also had a trivia card, and the trivia card was the age differential between Cher and Sonny Bono. Anybody have a guess?
25.
No guesses?
32.
32 years. No. I hit it on the head with 10 years, and I got a box of candy.
10 years?
Yeah, so that was entertaining.
He looked
So,
32 years older than her.
Again, it was a good conference, and if you can attend in the future, by all means do. Let's see. Other business?
I also attended a couple of conferences.
Oh, yes.
So I also attended the Urban Water Institute conference, and I agree, it was a very interesting conference. That's where Bill Hassenkamp gave his update, and really made the point of talking about perhaps maybe the unfair treatment in the lay media around the situation with the Colorado River. So I appreciated hearing that. I did not win anything in bingo, unfortunately. But one of the themes that was prevalent in the Urban Water Institute conference that I went to, as well as the Cal DSAL conference, was the importance of building trust with our customers. And I think that that's something that we do a pretty good job of. I think we're always striving to improve that. And in the next few maybe meetings of the P3 committee, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that's definitely a public awareness issue. But building relationships, building trust, and communicating with your customers and being transparent, not when you need to, because some things are right around the corner that they're going to be interested in, but more consistently. And not that I think we do a bad job of that, I don't, but I think there's always room for improvement. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the P3 committee, but a lot of great info coming out of the Urban Water Institute, as well as the Cal DSAL conference. And I will be reaching out to see if there is appetite. I met someone who actually he's one of my constituents, lives in San Alejo and works for San Diego County Water Authority, and knows a lot about DSAL. He's the treasurer of the Cal DSAL organization. And I wanted to coordinate with him and find out if he would be interested in coming and talking to us about a little bit more about desal. And then, maybe we can have him here at a meeting, or he could go to the P3 committee, or, just communicate the future of desal, how we get our water from desal, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about desal that I think we could all benefit from hearing some data around.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I attended the CSDA Leadership Conference in Palm Springs and achieved certification of a now informed board of directors. So appreciate the experience and the ability to learn from not only the experts that were there, but also peers, connected and made some great friends as well. Locally here with Leucadia Wastewater, so it's some good inroads there. And it was cool going there, and my badge had these cool little things on them, which were great conversation starters. And it's a testament to the hard work that both the directors and staff have done to reach accreditation and recognition over there. And in a lot of the breakout sessions and just general conversation, I learned that our district is leaps and bounds ahead of other districts in many ways, in everything that you all have helped set forth and achieve thus far, and we can always improve. So it was great to hear how other people do things as well. But I was very pleased to be representing our district up there in all of the special districts, and learn more about what it means to be effective governance and moving the ball forward for all of our ratepayers and constituents. So it's a great experience.
Very good. Anything else? Let's see. Meetings coming up. There's 2 meetings coming up from the Water Education Foundation, the Central Valley Tour and the Bay Delta Water Tour. I've been on both. I've been on the Delta a couple of times, and it's interesting. In my 12 years on the board, you can imagine this thing has been all over the map, from 4 tunnels to 2 to now 1. But if you have a choice, I would recommend you take that tour. I think it's 3 days, and you'll get an insight about both. The beauty of the Water Foundation, they don't just give a biased direction. They have people talking for it, talking against it, environmental, farmers, local, recreational people. You'll get a good understanding of what's all this Delta conversation has been going on since the peripheral canal. Oh my God. Wasn't that 55?
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Some of you weren't even born then, I don't think. So anyway, take a look at that. Director's comments, future agenda items. And I believe that's all. We are adjourned.